Hello guys, this is me again. Today's mini video will be about principles of living organisms classification. Have you ever wondered how many kinds of living organisms on Earth? Scientists managed to describe and name about 1.4 million different kinds of living organisms. But biologists believe that this number doesn't represent more than 10% only of the living organisms that are present on Earth, as there are millions types of insects, small animals and the plants that live in the deep ocean and are not discovered till now. So let me remind you that the cell is the basic building unit of all living organisms. And while there are living organisms that are composed only of one cell, like bacteria and amoeba, there are also multicellular organisms like us. These living organisms are similar in their building unit, which is the cell, and many other features like nutrition, excretion, respiration, reproduction, and growth. But they are also different from each other in many other characteristics, such as shape, structure, way of living, way of nutrition, and way of reproduction. And due to the enormous diversity in the living organisms, the need for classification process was appeared. So classification could be defined as the arrangement of living organisms in groups according to similarities and differences among them to facilitate their study. We have also taxonomy, which is a branch of biology that concerns with the classification of living organisms on scientific basis. So, the question now, why we have to classify living organisms? The answer, of course, would be to facilitate studying and identifying the living organisms, and to facilitate identifying the new organisms and adding them to their similar groups. It also benefits many other fields of science, like medicine or agriculture. Now, the modern classification depends on the definition of a species as the scientific and the basic principle in classifying the living organisms. So, the species, it's a group of individuals that have similar morphological characteristics, and the morphology here means external features. So they have similar external features, and they can mate with each other to produce fertile offspring. That's why mule, which is produced from mating of a female horse with male donkey, is not considered as a species, as it's sterile and unable to mate. The same as tigon, which is produced from mating of a female lion with male tiger. And again, because the huge number of species on Earth, and to unify the names of these different species, in 1753, Carl Linnaeus, the Swedish botanist and physician, invented a way to name the living organisms, in which each living organism is given two names. The first represents its genus, and the second represents its species. This system is known as binomial nomenclature. Linnaeus put some conditions for binomial nomenclature. First, the name must be written in Latin, as it's a very old language, not spoken anymore, and thus protecting the science from any change. Second, the name must be written in italic or underlined. Finally, the genus begins with a capital letter and the species begins with a small letter. Let's take an example. The scientific name of house cat is Felis domesticus, where Felis, which means cat in Latin, represents the genus of the cat, and domesticus, which means domestic in Latin, represents the species name. Finally, you have to know that there are 7 levels or groups for classifying the living organisms. Each group contains less number and more similar living organisms than the group preceding it. Levels begin with kingdom, which is the highest level in taxonomy. Each kingdom includes a number of phyla. Then phylum, which includes a number of classes, class, order, family, genus. Finally, species, and the species includes an interbreeding population of organisms that can produce healthy and fertile offspring of the same species.